What's good, everybody? This episode of the podcast is sponsored by DistroKid. They are the go-to for digital music distribution and the easiest way for musicians to get your music onto Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, TikTok, YouTube, and more. They offer unlimited uploads, and artists keep 100% of their earnings in stores 10 to 20 times faster than any other distributor. Fastest payouts. They help out with automatic splits, cover song clearance, and all kinds of other amazing tools and templates to help you get the most visibility for your releases. I dig this company and appreciate their business model that offers more features than any other distributor at the most affordable price possible for solo musicians, bands, DJs, studio artists, and any other creators that are producing music in their home, and they also offer label services as well. They've got 3 different tiers to offer creators that start as low as $22.99 a year. That's just $1.92 a month, and even their top tier is just $7.50 per month. And the best part about DistroKid sponsoring the podcast is that they are offering Dan Cable Presents listeners and viewers 30% off your first year of membership with DistroKid, making their already affordable prices even cheaper for you. Check out the link in the episode notes. I will also put it in my Instagram bio in the link tree. That link will give you 30% off that first year of service. Super stoked to have DistroKid sponsoring the podcast and cannot thank them enough for their long time support of this thing. This episode of the podcast is also sponsored by Puff Coffee. Puff is one of my favorite coffee shops in Portland, Oregon. They've got a location off 28th and Stark in Southeast. Their coffee is delicious, and everyone that works there is always super friendly. I had the pleasure of staying in their neighborhood for a month or so, and it was just a real treat to have this as my neighborhood coffee shop for a bit. And now I find myself going out of my way to get over there and get some coffee. Puff Coffee was started by the founder of Stumptown Coffee, and they are making small batch coffee roasted daily here in Portland. Their mission to find, roast, and deliver the most delicious coffees anywhere. Their small batch process means that they get to keep things interesting with experimental blends and single origin gems while always keeping the classics on deck. They've got a variety of beans to choose from, and if you're not in the Portland area, you can order their small batch coffee straight to your home through their website, and you can use the coupon code DANCABLE, all one word, for 20% off a coffee subscription. Links for Puff Coffee will be in the episode notes. Big thanks to Puff for supporting the show and for their amazing small batch coffee. Now let's get into the episode.
Look down at the
What is happening, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Dan Cable Presents podcast. Thank you for tuning into the program once again. This is your first time listening. Thanks for checking out the show. You can find fresh episodes coming at you every Tuesday. And if you want to help support this thing in a free way, you can do so by clicking subscribe on iTunes, clicking write a review, giving the podcast 5 stars if you feel like it is deserving of so, and that will help propel this thing into the tops of those iTunes charts, giving it more visibility on the national and international levels, helping strangers find the podcast. Just a great way to contribute to the growth and sustainability of this thing. Appreciate the hell out of all the folks that have already taken the time to do so. Cannot stress the importance of doing that. If you're not listening on Apple, just hit follow wherever you're listening from. On Spotify, you give it 5 stars there. If you're watching on YouTube, you hit subscribe there. You can watch all the episodes on YouTube now. Back to episode 400 is when things started to get filmed. So check it out there if you want to watch the episodes and see some of the visuals that are going along with the conversation. And check out the monthly playlist that I've been dropping every first of the month. 40 tracks every month, pretty spread out genre-wise, and just a snapshot of what I'm listening to throughout the month. Some things that are making it into my DJ sets. And this week on the podcast, stoked to get into this one, we've got Los Angeles-based band Brother Swan on the cast, and this is a band that I feel like I kind of found as the result of putting together those monthly playlists, always trying to find new music. And, every once in a while, the algorithm feeds you something good. And I know that one of their songs made it onto a playlist, but I'm not sure if it was just actually the Spotify algorithm, if it was the Instagram algorithm that fed me the Brother Swan music and led me in that direction. But I'm glad that it did. Had a great hang and fun chat with Chris and Ian from the band. And it was just kind of wild. My buddy Andrew Harrison from the band Junior Bloomer, who's a former guest of the podcast, we were hanging out one day and he was like, "Hey man, this band Brother Swan hit me up." And you'll hear this in the intro to the chat with the guys too. But yeah, he just was like, "Hey, this band from Los Angeles is coming up through town. They're putting together a tour. They really want to play Portland." And I was like, "Oh, crazy! Like I already know who this band is." So we were able to figure out how to put together a show with them, and that happened just this past Thursday here in Portland. And then the next day we recorded this podcast. So it was cool to be able to catch a live set and then have the opportunity to chat with Chris and Ian from the band right here in the Primetime Cable studio. Dove into the creative dynamics. We talked origin of the band and them coming from Florida to Los Angeles and kind of where they're at now in the creative process as they prepare to put their follow-up record to their debut 2022 album Loom, which is out wherever you listen to music. You can find that. I will put all of the links in the episode notes. If you dig the music, please give Brother Swan the follow. And just love the opportunities to be able to help facilitate putting together a show for someone while they're on tour. And the next opportunity I have to do that is on August 18th here in Portland, Oregon. I have the privilege of putting together a show for one of my favorite bands out of Salt Lake City. They're called Harpers. And they're coming through August 18th, playing the Lollipop Shop, one of the newer venues in Portland. Great place to see music if you haven't been there yet. And I'm going to be DJing a little bit that night, but headlining the show is my friend and favorite songwriter in Portland, Isabeau. And she's got the full band going that night. So Isabeau and the Noise Boys in full effect at the Lollipop Shop. It's going to be a killer night of music, so put that one on your calendar if you're here in Portland. And if you're new to the cast and you came because of Brother Swan, happy to have you here. I hope you enjoy this chat. Check out some of the previous episodes. Rosie Tucker was the last LA person to be on the podcast not that long ago. And new episodes coming out every week, typically myself in conversation with an artist of all genres. And with all of that, we are going to get in to episode 421 of the podcast. Brother Swan from Los Angeles, California on the show. And to kick things off, we are going to play that In the Morning track from Brother Swan. This was my entry point to this band, and it's what got me hooked in. I hope it does the same for you. Now let's do the damn thing.
Will we sleep before you leave? Tangled up in hot water. Have you found a love sleeping like a ghost in backyard? Forgive me, I'm dreaming. Forgive me, I'm thinking of a
You guys feeling good?
Feeling good.
Ready to do it?
Let's do it.
Brother Swan on the pod.
Brother Swan on the pod.
Stoked to have you guys here.
We're stoked to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. You guys reached out to Andrew from Junior Bloomer about trying to set up a Portland show. And I was with him just like a few days later, and he was like, "Hey man, this band called Brother Swan from LA hit me up about trying to like put together a Portland show. They're trying to do a tour." And I was like, "Cool." I was like, "Damn, that sounds really familiar." And I always put together a monthly playlist that I put out every first of the month, typically if I'm on time. And I had like, previous to him telling me about you guys reaching out, I had put that In the Morning track on one of my playlists. It's just like somehow found me. It might have been like an Instagram type targeted ad that I was just, I don't know. I find so much music still, so much new music that way still, you know, where I'm just like, all right, I'll check that out later. Or I don't know if it just ended up in my Spotify algorithm.
So wild. Yeah.
But yeah, it was just very coincidental. And I was like, dude, I know that band and they're making great music. So like, yeah, let's try to do this. So it was just like, yeah, just a funny coincidence that just right in that same pocket of time that you somehow found him and reached out.
It was meant to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I heard that, because he had told me afterwards that, there's this guy, Dan, and he has a podcast, and he had heard about our music already when we were trying to book the show.
Yeah.
And my brain just sort of melted and came out of my ears. Like, that is, yeah. I mean, it's like we're reaching the right people, apparently, it seems.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just it's strange how there's so much music coming out all like every single day, and somehow it doesn't matter really how many followers you have. It can find people and connect with it, which is amazing.
Yeah, and that's really the staggering part about it. Is there's so much media, just music, everything, and for you to have encountered it, the odds of that, is insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was so sick setting all this up. I mean, without exaggeration, we've been planning this tour for 6 months, and a big part of that was just doing the research, trying to find bands like Andrews and Junior Bloomer,
Yeah.
to put together a good show. And then the fact that it all kind of came together, and he was like, "Oh, you got to meet my my buddy Dan, who was a promoter in Portland." And yeah, it was just a small world moment that felt really cool.
Yeah. I just if I can, you always hope that the room's gonna be packed out, but whether it's like being able to help someone put together a show in a city that they've never played before is it just feels good to do that, I guess, because like I've watched my friends go on tour, or I've been on tour, and like it's hard to find the right people sometimes if you don't know anybody in that scene. So it's I don't know, it's really great to like be able to help people out in that way. I think
It's super appreciated.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, just also like having, you, of course you have to, your first time is your first time where, when you're playing new places, but like, we don't want to just sort of like drop in and, play with, the folk artist with the hip hop band headlining, and then the cavalcade of comedy kind of thing. So getting to find musicians who are kind of making music that we admire and people that we want to play with has been just awesome on this whole stretch of like, here's new music, and folks that we're just excited to hear them play live.
Yeah. I think it's the move too, like from,
I think it's probably a lack of resources or maybe time on venues end, but it's such a dice roll just kind of leaving it in their hands. If you can find like a venue that's like, okay, you can do this, and you're like, do you have people? And it's like, you can trust that they're gonna place you with people that are going to work out for you, or make sense to you, but it doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah,
and especially in LA too, like, social media following has nothing to do with the amount of people that come to the show.
Yeah.
Oh, that shit's a sham. Like,
It's a
sham.
just in general. Like,
Yeah.
I think for like, I don't even know if it's just LA in that sense. It feels very much to me. I mean, obviously, like somebody that has 50,000 followers and is like a very well-known artist, like that's not bullshit. But like, you can find somebody that has 20,000 followers, maybe even has decent engagement on these things, and maybe only 10, 15 people show up for them to play.
Right. Yeah, we've encountered that a lot, and it seems like LA sort of breeds the kind of personality, or attracts the kind of personality of like the sort of person who's going to be buying followers and that sort of thing to gain that visibility. And yeah, it definitely feels like a bit of a sham.
Yeah.
I mean, but it encourages it too, because certain venues will gatekeep. Like, you don't have 5K, you can't play here. Doesn't matter if you bring out 100 people on a Tuesday, they won't let you play.
Right.
So it's like it's one of those where
yeah, it's a weird time.
It's
so
a weird time.
But yeah, man, before stumbling upon the Loom record and the songs on there, I obviously like didn't know a whole lot about your band, except that you were coming up from LA, and then talked to Ian a little bit at the venue yesterday. Are you both from Florida?
Yep.
Okay. So
I did middle school, high school there. Yeah.
Okay. Talk to me just about what were you guys doing individually before Brother Swan started, as far as like music background and where you guys came from and whatnot.
Well, I started writing songs probably around the age of like 17, 18.
Okay.
And was playing music primarily with Chris Wyson, the drummer, in Brother Swan. And we've just been sort of musical partners for, 20 some odd years at this point, but not always writing songs, just playing together in garages and whatnot. And I played in other bands in middle school and in high school or whatever, but he's been the guy that we've, sort of developing our musical tastes and our sensibilities kind of in tandem with one another. And then eventually I started up a project called Year of Suns, which was a little bit more of like a folk rock thing during the folk rock explosion of like Fleet Foxes and all that.
Okay.
And I brought him on to do that record, and that was sort of a turning point of like, oh, we want to make records. Like this is the thing. And we did that in a little home studio in Miami, because we're both from Miami.
Okay.
And took that project to LA and was continuing to develop that, and then tried to make a record. Actually did record a great deal of it in like around 2017, 2018 with J.R. White. I don't know if you remember J.R. White from the band Girls, San Francisco band.
Okay.
And he helped record a lot of that, and it just sort of has been on the shelf for a while. I still need to mix that record.
Okay. Yeah.
Still.
I just think in that time it was like, the record was pretty much done, but I had started shifting into another project, which is now Brother Swan.
So it was previous to Brother Swan and making that record that has not been released. That was that when you really personally dove into songwriting?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, that time, I think Year of Suns really kicked off the big kind of songwriting trajectory and being more serious about songwriting and crafting songs and being interested in making records. That was the main thrust of what I was interested in, both from a songwriting standpoint as well as an engineering standpoint,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, that's been the thing. It's like songwriting and engineering simultaneously being the important things.
So was the Loom record self-recorded?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Chris and I met at King Size Sound Labs down in Eagle Rock in LA.
Okay.
And at the time, was I even a house engineer by that point, or was I still an assistant? I don't
You
even remember.
were an assistant, yeah.
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 So basically, Loom came about where Chris, literally the week of the pandemic shutdown, you know, of course, every label pulls out, everything shuts down, and Chris calls up the owners and goes, "Well, since the studio's empty, could we like just be in there for a few days?"
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, up until that point, Chris had showed me the song that became "Good Luck Baby," and I was just like, "Dude, I'm in." Like, you know, Chris sings and plays guitar. Obviously, Wyson is on drums, and I was like, "Hey, man, if you need like a bass player or whatever, like, I just really like this music." So we got in there for maybe like 4 or 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
I think I don't even think I was there for one of them, for whatever reason. But yeah, we just kind of got in there and got started, and then laid a lot of the bones down, and just realized like, wow, this is really going to be something special. And we brought on our producer Jason Rhodes, and just that took it to, you know, just a level that I don't think any of us really thought we could even get to at that time.
Yeah.
Just like,
Yeah.
and it was such, you know, of course the circumstances were so bizarre. We wound up doing a lot of the guitars on my patio, running cables from my living room to Jason's next door, and the, you know, whoever was tracking guitar, bass, or whatever, they'd literally be outside in between the two houses with cables running through windows on either side, because again, we're trying to social distance and be as safe as we could while still making the record. So yeah, it's about, you know, I'd say good parts really homegrown DIY, and also, you know, drums at the very least were recorded, you know, at King Size through the big Neve that they had at the time. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys just met at King Size.
Mm-hmm.
Coincidentally, both from Florida.
Yep.
And Ian, you're from Fort Lauderdale, you said?
yeah, I did middle school and high school there.
Okay. So just
just
like
north.
We never knew each other
30,
in Florida.
40 minutes
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
where you were growing up.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, we probably went to a lot of the same shows, you know.
Definitely.
And yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
geeked out on that initially, I'm assuming, too, just as much as the...
Yeah, like the
music.
venues, you know,
Yeah.
like the
Mhm.
weird venues in, you know, Fort Lauderdale or whatever, and
I-
seeing weird shows, you know.
Yeah, I think another thing that we kind of joke about too is like we're good friends because we're both from Florida and chose to leave.
Yeah.
Like we know what it's like.
Yeah.
And it takes a certain kind of person to, you know,
Yeah.
to recognize that maybe the music scene isn't what you want it to be,
Yeah.
but also leave and do something about it and go to LA and roll the dice on a brand new place,
Yeah.
knowing no one.
Yeah, yeah. I was listening to Chris Owens on a podcast, who was the other half of Girls, that
Okay.
San Francisco band. And he was talking about going to San Francisco in the early 2000s or whatever, and he was like, yeah, there's just this kind of collective sense of everybody wanting something else out of life other than that traditional trajectory of having, you know, the wife and kids and the car and the whatever.
Yeah.
And I think if you leave Florida, there is a value orientation, especially if you're going to a place like Los Angeles and you want to be creative. It's like, yeah, there's going to be some kinship there just off the bat, you know. And of course, we're both in a recording studio, so there's that, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You're going to hopefully find like-minded people in
Yeah,
some community,
exactly.
like immediately, hopefully through that experience. But yeah, that's a wild leap to move across the country like that. And like, that's exciting though too. Like one of my favorite music documentaries is Tom Petty's Running Down a Dream. And much different time of no cell phones and social media, obviously, but he just talks about like convincing his his bandmates to, you know, they're all like from Gainesville, and just to kind of get in the van and like, we're going to go to LA. Like, we don't really have much guaranteed there, but we're going to go figure it out.
Take a leap of faith.
Yeah.
You have to do that. Even these days, it's like, you know, booking these shows, we're taking leaps of faith.
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
On every front.
I just feel like nowadays, though, I mean, and again, you know, hindsight's 2020, but like with everything that's going on in the world, I mean, I have friends who go to med school or get a, you know, law degree, and it's like, even for them, it's still hard to get a job.
Yeah.
So it's like, you might as well just try and do what you love, because nothing in life is guaranteed, even if, you know, you think it's a steady career path or whatever.
Absolutely.
That's true.
You know?
Ian, what were you, what is your music background?
I started playing drums actually, like, I don't know, 11, 12, something like that.
Okay.
I mean, just literally like a practice pad, and then, you know, got the kit. But I think my songwriting kind of, I got really into songwriting, and I think it was the first moment where I realized that, you know, maybe I needed to be somewhere else, because I was playing in cover bands, and, you know, especially on drums, like, you know, as a teenager, I loved playing, like, you know, Megadeth and just loud, fast, you know, some Pantera stuff.
Yeah.
You know, anything like 80s metal. I've just somehow, you know,
Heavy.
in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, like, that's just what people were playing in the early thousands. And like, I enjoyed playing it, but I never gravitated towards that. I never wanted to write songs like that. So I kind of just got into writing my own stuff. Like, you know, my dad had an acoustic guitar floating around. You know, I eventually saved up and got like a little like Ibanez SR bass and like a Tascam thing that recorded directly to CD. And, you know, just a couple of 57s or whatever knockoff drum mic package. Just started recording my own stuff by myself, because no one was really that interested in making original music. And certainly not in that kind of like indie alt rock. You know, I really like Incubus or Jimmy Eat World or Third Eye Blind. Like, that was the stuff that I really, you know, wanted to pursue.
You enjoyed like that big production, like quality to those things.
Yeah, and just also more of the honesty of it. Like, at least coming from, you know, listening to like hair metal.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, for sure.
It's so over the top, and it's very like, it's about the spectacle of the music. It's about the spectacle of the show.
Right.
And I don't know, I just liked more introspective, thought-provoking, you know, I love lyrics. Like, that's often a thing that makes or breaks a band for me, is like, can they really craft meaningful, emotive words that fit with the music?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, from just the little kind of like garage where I had some instruments and stuff, I went to Massachusetts for college, and had a mentor there who he's an amazing saxophonist, this guy Jason Robinson. And he actually took me on the road with him. He, you know, I don't know how he got the position passed by the college, but I was basically like his personal assistant, and like I got to go on tour. I filmed some stuff kind of documentary style for him. And just really got to see like, hey, when you're a touring musician and like, this is how it works. He took me to, it's unfortunately no longer there, this incredible recording studio called Systems 2 in Brooklyn. I don't know if when you were in New York you heard of it, but it's very jazz focused. The Marciano brothers, just these incredible engineers. Like, they had Steinway D from Carnegie Hall there. They had like John Coltrane's saxophone mic. I mean, just every single piece of equipment there had just a legendary story.
Yeah.
And, you know, after that tour, I mean, I just, you know, instantly, the one recording studio in town, I was like, hey, can I be an intern here? Like, I really like this. So yeah, I mean, just, you know, living in Western Mass in Amherst at the time, I was like, again, just getting closer to finding the musical community that I really felt a part of. And funnily enough, like I felt when I was there, I mean, we did, I was in a college band playing a lot of covers and doing, it's so much easier to tour on the East Coast. So we would just do, 3 shows a weekend and be in 3 different states.
Right.
And again, like getting closer, but still not really feeling like, oh, this, there wasn't really like indie rock happening. It was either very folky or like avant-garde jazz.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What instrument were you playing in, like, at that time?
Mm-hmm.
Mainly.
I was the singer and rhythm guitar player. And yeah, I mean, again, writing my own songs with a group of guys who are still really, really good friends of mine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just wanted to really, like, I was really into everything coming off Danger Bird Records at the time. So this was like 2010, 11, 12, and like Silver Sun Pickups were blowing up, Minus the Bear, all these really cool bands, and just nobody in the Massachusetts scene was that into it the way that I was.
Mm-hmm.
And after graduating, I was like, maybe I should just go there. That's what I want to do. That's what the music I like listening to.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So you're pretty immediately attracted to what Chris was doing, songwriting wise.
Oh yeah.
Once you heard these tunes.
I mean, especially as kind of assistant engineers, interns. There are a lot of sessions where they don't want you around. You can go and get the coffee and, oh, wow, okay, that's the setup. Cool.
Yeah.
You're definitely not allowed to take pictures. That's not cool.
Yeah.
Right.
So we were put on some big session, but they just didn't want us there. So we went to the B room and we're just hanging out and just kind of playing each other's stuff. And yeah.
Yeah. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And most of so that Looms record was like pretty far along, would you say? Like the songs on that record were already pretty far along when you guys met?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say they were mostly written, ready to go, ready to be recorded. I mean, at this point, Ian was a fairly serious engineer, so he had the chops to be able to, be on a 32-channel Neve or whatever it was. And yeah, it was essentially ready to go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So do you guys feel like you both like equally love making the music as much as like the engineering technical side of things, or?
1000%. Yeah.
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 I again, just, everything's a part of the learning process, but pretty early on, even working in the studio in Massachusetts called Northfire. I think Jay Mascis actually recorded there. Like it's a really cool studio. And working with some of those folks and being on the other side of the glass, and just like, I'm also being in your early 20s, like you kind of don't know how to communicate stuff sometimes, and it's hard to talk about sound, even, as deep as we are into engineering and writing, and, you can learn all the names of the chords, but like, how do you say that you want it to be a combination of like, Johnny Marr from the Smiths, but also that like Jay Mascis grit? Like it's so abstract. And if you can just learn how to just like, okay, I want to turn this knob on the EQ and push that guitar pedal, like it just becomes very physical very quickly, and you don't have to translate so much.
Yeah. Did you guys seem to have like a lot of shared reference points for things? Like, were you guys pretty into a lot of things that like crossed over, or do you guys have like pretty different musical tastes, would you say, or listening
yes
to like
and no.
a lot of different stuff?
Yeah, there's definitely more overlap than there is, I think, a difference in our musical tastes and sensibilities and whatnot.
I think especially at the beginning, though, like a big part of all of this was just like us sending each other music or sitting down and listening to stuff together.
Yeah.
And like building that common vocabulary.
Yeah. I can't think of like a singular band or label or something that we're like, oh yeah, this is the thing. It was just like sending stuff back and forth, and most of the time being like, that's cool. That's cool.
Mm-hmm. Kind of just being nerds.
Yeah. I don't think we were also like specifically talking about certain bands. Maybe we were in the creation of the record, like referencing. Sometimes I'll do that. It's like, oh, I want, the J Mascis sound, or I
Yeah.
want, the My Bloody Valentine sound, or whatever. And I think a lot of bands do that. It's fairly common.
I think we also went pretty quickly towards, rather than like, oh, we want to sound like this band, it'll be like this one guitar sound from this song.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
it wound up being very specific.
It's probably a better route to go anyway,
think
so you
so,
don't
yeah.
like end up completely ripping something off. Because
Right.
I think you're like, I mean, you're definitely going to, your influences are going to shine through. I think, like, especially first couple goes at things,
Yeah.
maybe more than ever before you like maybe carve out what the Brother Swan sound is, or like what your sound is. But
Yes, definitely.
And it's ever evolving.
like for
Yeah.
like see if this like lands like even in the realm of what you were listening to. But when I heard In the Morning for the first time, I was like, damn, this reminds me of that Turnover record that's like right
Oh,
behind your
cool.
head.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I've heard that reference actually.
And like that was like one of the things that drew me into wanting to listen more, is like, oh, this feels to me like it's in a similar spirit to this particular Turnover record that I absolutely love. But
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, that definitely, you are not the first to mention Turnover. So I should probably listen to that record.
You should.
Yeah,
while
we should give it
you're
a-
on the
give it
road.
a
I feel
respin.
like you.
Yeah.
I feel like you would love it.
Yeah. Last time I heard it was like, okay, yeah, I can see where people are drawing that. I like that. I like hearing what people hear in it. I know other bands or other artists feel a sense of like, oh, I'm not being heard, or I'm being misrepresented or mischaracterized. Sometimes when people are just totally off base, it's like, oh, that's a little jarring.
Well, it's cool because that like I sometimes like talking about it in like this realm of things, just because that obviously wasn't a big reference point
Right.
for you. Like
Right,
you
right,
don't
right.
really know that record.
Yeah.
And like, so I think that is cool because
Yeah.
it's like something I heard in it, but it's not where it came from in you.
Yeah. I would say 99% of the time it's like bands that are adjacent to who we're listening to,
Yeah.
and they're good references, they're good reference points, but 99% of the time people are not getting the actual influences, which I think is interesting.
Well, I mean, it's, there with so much music out there, it's kind of hard to be like, oh wow, they really like
Yeah.
Swerve Driver.
Yeah,
Mescal
for sure.
Head. That's
Yeah.
the sound. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you
That's
know,
true.
definitely.
That's very true.
yeah.
I think the most fun of putting a lot of this material out has been people telling us what they hear and then going and listening to it and be like, oh yeah, this is really cool. Like,
yeah, exactly. And then that may be informing the songwriting once we hear something that's
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely.
I am haunting your front door to be waiting on some company. It's easy. I am witnessing a friend slowly disappear into nothing. Falling again. Yeah, you fall certain there's no
What would you say, Ian, you obviously were interested in the songs when you heard Chris's songs from the jump, but like, what would you say like the other things that attracted you guys one another, like as far as like sensibilities, and like why you have kind of decided to, put time and energy into this project, like beyond just making that Loom record?
Yeah, I feel like, I've been a part of a lot of bands for, most of my, I mean, certainly my entire adult life, I've always been in a band since at least the time I've been 15. I've never not been in a band. But for the first time, I'm really feeling like we've stumbled upon something really unique while feeling that it's, familiar and accessible. And, there's these little signposts that for bigger artists, they probably are so used to, but like stuff like we played a show in San Jose and 2 people came. And then the next night we were in Oakland, and those 2 people followed us to Oakland. Like,
amazing.
All these little things, and like that's just so cool that somebody likes our music so much to where they want to see us do a similar set just the very next night.
Yeah.
And by no means do we do this for the external validation. Like, I love this music and it means so much to be able to be a part of a project like this, but it's also pretty cool to know that it's making an impact, and that folks like yourself are hearing it and then would want to book a show with us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it is nice after being in bands for 20 years that there are these little signposts that make me reflect and go, wow, this is like it's just starting to grow some legs, and I don't think anyone's going to buy a house off it or anything, but it's at least want people to come to the shows.
Yeah. But is there like something like, what do you recognize maybe in the dynamic between you guys that like makes it that special?
Oh, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just your band is the dysfunctional family you choose to have, right? But we're coming to the table. I mean, you can never agree all the time about everything.
Yeah.
And that's just a given. I mean, even whether that's your partner or your friend or your band, like you're never going to agree with everything all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But the communication that you develop about those disagreements is so crucial. And if you can learn to compromise and agree to disagree sometimes, and trust that the other person is hearing maybe something that you're not, and accept that and roll with it, that's huge. That's everything. And I just think, certainly Chris winds up being the middleman.
I disagree.
A lot of the
I disagree
time.
with everything you're saying.
Yeah, I'm watching Chris process this right now.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
just like,
absolutely.
what the fuck is he saying?
Like, no, dude,
I was like, no,
that's
no.
so off base.
Are we
Yeah.
communicating well? You think we're communicating well?
Clearly, there's a chasm here.
I quit.
No, I mean, I think, to go back to your original question, which was about, what is it about this person that is attractive outside of the music, right?
Yeah.
That was your original question?
Yeah, or just like the sensibilities that like when,
Yeah.
like obviously you guys shared this passion for engineering and songwriting.
Yeah.
So that I'm sure is very helpful to your
Yes.
guys' dynamic and like the
Mhm.
efficiency and what can
Yes.
happen between the two of you, and being
Yeah.
able to facilitate recording sessions, whether it's in a big nice studio or in the home DIY setup. But
Yeah.
like, I would assume that you also appreciated Ian's playing in some way, or his ideas about the
Mhm.
music, and you didn't
Yeah.
just like let him run wild with it without feeling like there was, something there.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think as far as when I met Ian, we were in this environment, in studio environments, and a lot of the personalities that tend to be in recording studios, engineers and the like, I was starting to realize like a lot of these guys are kind of stone-faced, prickly, moody people.
Yeah.
These like
That's putting it nicely.
yeah, these recording studio, curmudgeons, a lot of them, not all of them, but like it seemed to,
It's a trope.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
trope for sure. And also can be just the sweetest, most genuine people that you'll ever meet. Right. And then, I don't know, it's just like when I met Ian, there was like immediately this kind of engaged and helpful and almost mentoring personality you know, and I was like, oh wow, this is somebody that I feel like I could have a good collaborative relationship with. And that was totally outside of anything that was musical.
Yeah.
You know, and then the other stuff, the sensibilities, obviously his playing, and then that was just like, oh, these are all bonuses. You know, and I knew that he had his own project.
Yeah.
And was doing his own thing, and had heard some of that. It's like, oh yeah, this guy can write songs too. So yeah, it was, I think the initial attraction was totally outside of music. Just like, oh yeah, this is somebody that I could collaborate with.
Yeah, which seems to be like more important as you get older.
Yeah.
It's not like you can find the person that has like the incredible chops.
Yeah.
And is like an amazing player, but it's just not the vibe
Right.
for the hang.
Right,
you know?
exactly.
And that gets a little like you got to weigh those things out when you're even when you're going to go on a 6-show tour up the coast in a car together. Like you got to like examine those things and be like, is it worth taking this person that's like so technically sound and I know is going to like play a great show, but I don't really like hanging out with them that much. You know?
Yeah. No, it was pretty immediate, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So obviously that first record, a lot of it was written. So I wouldn't assume that there was like too much was there a lot creatively still happening within that process between, like, was there room for ideas to still make their way into the songs? Like, were they still in that stage of things?
Definitely, yeah. I think we've learned a lot about the art of making a demo, but for the process of Loom, I mean, I think we were even still coming up with whole sections of the song. Like,
Okay.
Good Luck Baby didn't have that bridge or guitar solo,
Okay.
just to like. I think When's the Last Time was written in studio, you and Weiss.
That is true. That is the one exception. I know I said that the record was pretty much ready to go, and it was. There were certain exceptions where it's like, oh yeah, When's the Last Time was something that was sort of baked in the studio.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, to touch on kind of the creative relationship, like one thing I really enjoy about Chris is like he doesn't take anything so preciously, and oftentimes, you know, we'll go back and forth and try stuff, and at the end of the day, the goal is to serve the song and do the best we can, whether that's, you know, it needs a guitar solo.
Yeah.
We don't really solo, but you know what I mean, guitar part, or what happens if we throw an organ on there and some keys or a tambourine. Like, there's a lot of especially in the early days, there was a lot of that kind of back and forth of, you know, how far can we push this? How much deeper can we go? You know, what is the first knee-jerk reaction to a thing? But also, what if we tried a few more ideas too?
Yeah.
This second album that we're working on now is, I think, appropriately going to be self-titled, because this really is a super collaborative batch of songs that we all collectively wrote. And, you know, Chris is, you know, generous enough to make the space for there to be other songwriters.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. What about that is attractive to you, Chris? Like, I guess, like, you know, coming out of having your own project and maybe with this batch of tunes, not really knowing that there would be like an Ian that would come in to your life. So is it, I don't know, is it always feel good to make space for that? Like, does it relieve some of the stress of feeling like you have to have all of the ideas?
You know, just crippling insecurity. Total self-doubt. I think there's a philosophical thing about it where I like to make music and come up with an idea and then put it in people's hands that I trust.
Yeah.
And that to me really is the point, right? Making a record with people that I love and that I care about, and that I can see that when I show them an idea and they're excited about it,
Yeah.
that is sort of everything to me. You know, writing, I think if you're writing songs for your friends, for your bandmates, and they react to it in a strong way, that's the juice. That's extracting the juice of why I do this, you know? And so I also think it makes the songs better. You know, I think the opposite side of that is a guy like James Murphy, who like needs to have that creative control, and if he's compromising on his vision, then he gets anxiety, and like he knows that about himself,
Right.
and knows that the songs are going to be optimized and having that full creative control. And I'm on the other side where I know that the songs are just not going to be as good if I'm just fleshing them out alone. And that's, yeah, I've heard other musicians talk about it in that way. And I kind of like that I'm that way, because other people want to have their kind of creative fingerprint on things, and want to feel a sense of ownership. And then you produce this thing and they can say individually, like, oh yeah, I participated in that. And they can feel a sense of ownership and fulfillment in working with me.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. I think that's everything.
Yeah, it gives them some equity in the project and makes them more passionate about the thing, you know, like you let them like voice some ideas. Especially ones that maybe end up sticking.
Exactly.
But even the ones that don't, as long as they know that they can at least say something, you know, like you were saying, Ian, like, it's cool. You want to try something? Like, you're open to like letting me fuck around with this track, even whether it ends up on the record or not. Like, let's try this, you know?
Yeah, I think it's like creating parameters to be free. You know, like you choose certain people in certain environments.
Yeah.
And then there can be freedom because you've created these parameters.
Yeah.
You know? And I think it's developing a skill in learning who can augment these songs, who can deliver in these songs, and, you know, feeling that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in creating this newer batch of tunes that you guys are working on, and some of the songs that are rolling out now post the first record, what does writing look like between you guys at this point?
I think it is a similar approach to Loom, but I think the process of fleshing out the material is much more collaborative, you know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like I'll bring the initial idea a lot of the time, and like Ian that's totally new for us. Ian will bring a completely new idea, and then we'll go from there. But I would say the majority of it has been like me saying, hey, here's this thing. And then we all just sort of jump on it. And
yeah. I mean, it always takes a seed. You know, it's very rare for, you know, 3-4 people to sit in a room and, you know, just kind of stare at each other until someone plays something cool.
Yeah.
So having that initial seed of an idea does typically start with Chris. But funny enough, I mean, being on tour, this is our second time now kind of getting out of LA for a couple of days. The second song that we played, Lurker, that's literally Wyson and I were sitting in the kitchen while Chris was taking a shower our last time in San Jose, and just like kind of like he was just like, oh yeah, just play something kind of like Neil Youngy, and we just like came up with this really like psych-ish kind of thing that turned into that song. And you know, our process has just kind of opened up, and I don't know, it's been interesting because it really, again, just feels so collaborative. Every, you know, even Weiss and the drummer will be like, hey, what if we tried this guitar part, you know, and just like trying to sing notes and like, you know, just everyone kind of having looking at what the other person's doing and just, you know, hey, what if we tweaked it lyrically, the vocal melodies, harmonies, just everything's kind of collectively curated now.
Yeah, definitely.
Even if, again, the idea does start with one person.
Yeah, I think it makes the, you know, I'm always intrigued, or maybe provides another level of engagement, you know, seeing people, you know, take turns singing lead at points. And even if that was only once last night, or, you know, the cover song that you guys played or last night, you know, and you know, I think that just like adds to the depth of the show sometimes. And it like, it creates a little mystery too, because then it's like, you know, not knowing much about you guys, you know, it like left me wondering like, oh, I wonder like who's writing all the lyrics, or if that is even maybe like a collaborative process with some of the stuff, and, you know, things along those lines.
Yeah, and that's part and parcel with the approach of putting things in people's hands and being selfless and whatever else. That definitely translates to the live thing, where I've always been kind of more in the camp of wanting that added dimension of like, who is the lead singer? That's what I loved about Grizzly Bear. You know, it's like, is Ed Trosty the lead singer? Is Dan Rawson? I still to this day couldn't really tell you, you know. One probably sings more songs than the other, but to me it's not definitive.
Yeah.
You know? And I would love to strive for that even more than I don't like this kind of hierarchical thing that happens where it's like the lead singer and then whatever else. It's like, I just think to me it's kind of boring, you know?
Yeah.
So
maybe limiting.
yeah,
in some
yeah,
way, too.
exactly. Like I just don't want to be in that box.
Yeah, it's just kind of nice that you don't feel like it's like, yeah, Ian's gonna sing this one.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna do or we're gonna do one of Ian's like songs that he's brought. Like
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a good
Yeah.
attitude to have. You know, as long as the songs hit. Like I don't think it should
exactly.
be done
Right.
just to be done.
No, exactly.
But like, you know, if
Hopefully
something
it
hits.
hits.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and again, this is definitely a part of a lot of the conversations we're having as we're getting deeper into this, recording this next album is like, you know, defining kind of what the Brother Swan sound is, what we're interested in exploring, at least, you know, on an album to album basis. And just trying to create the most cohesive, you know, engaging group of songs. And I don't know, I think that's, yeah, it's really cool that, again, Chris just, he's not a super precious guy when it comes to, you know, obviously it needs to be to a level.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's not that ego of like, I'm the front man and no one else sings. Like,
Oh, fuck that.
I mean, especially
Yeah.
with Swimmer too. I mean, Swimmer was, I think, the first song that started this whole batch of songs that is now going to be our second album. And we sing in harmony the entire track.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just works.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. I mean, it's, having sung in bands my whole life, I think it would be tough for me to be a part of a project where I didn't sing at all.
Yeah.
I just love to sing. It's
Yeah.
just a part of who I am. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Chris is a part of that mentality. Just maybe like when you're bringing song ideas to the band, just like not really feeling like you already have the best idea for the song in some ways.
1000%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also that's one idea, right? And I want there to be a kind of soup of ideas, and then that's usually where you get to the optimized thing, you know, or like the best example of that thing is the back and forth, for me personally. I mean, the idea of like, you know, first idea, best idea, like I can see that that's legitimate, but I don't know. I always feel like it's incomplete.
I think the other thing that, you know, most people don't see is like, you know, we get up and play a 45-minute set of whatever, 9-10 songs. In writing this album alone, we wrote more than 30. Just
okay.
and that's, you know, that's the whole new batch of tracks. We obviously played older songs.
Yeah.
We had a cover song, like, you know, and just throw out ideas. Let's see what sticks. Let's see what, you know, let's see what works. And then after the creative flow, you know, ebbs back out, okay, what songs are really the most cohesive batch? Which ones
Yeah.
are going to work live?
Yeah.
And having that curatorial element happen after the writing process.
Yeah, exactly. Which that's new. We've never done that before. I've never done that before. It's like I have to strive to get to the record. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're not like,
Yeah.
yeah. Now you're cutting songs
Now
instead of
cutting,
just
yeah.
having
Dude.
like, no, I mean,
Yeah.
I wrote these 10.
Yeah.
These are the 10 that go on the project, or
Right.
these are the 10 that we play. Now it's
Yeah.
like, we wrote 30. Now let's find the best 10.
Exactly.
Or-
Yeah.
There's no filler.
Well, it's kind of nice too, because if you are doing that and you are just thinking about like, sometimes you're just thinking about cohesion.
Yeah.
It's like, well, maybe some of the songs that didn't make it aren't necessarily like off the table. They're just like not for this, and
Exactly.
maybe like a good idea for one of those songs comes about later.
Yeah, yeah. We think of things in buckets now, where it's like, oh yeah, that's the publishing bucket, that's the record bucket, that's the
Yeah.
you know,
That's
whatever
the fuck
else.
it bucket.
Fuck it bucket. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I don't know, maybe it's like an ADHD thing where I just need to compartmentalize things. I don't know, but
It's just your whole life mentality.
yeah, exactly.
Compartmentalize.
Everything needs a drawer or something.
So as far as like thinking about this new batch of tunes lyrically, are those usually pretty set in stone or like pretty close, like closely nailed down when you're usually bringing ideas, or is that also a part of the collaboration, or like are you usually open on suggestions for those types of things as well, or is it important for those things to remain in your voice because you are often singing them?
Yeah, well, I think the good thing about the way that I write lyrics is it's a stream of consciousness, kind of abstract thing, impressionistic, so it could be disjointed, it could be, like sort of dream logic or whatever you want to call it. And then that means that he gets to interpret the lyrics. Chris Wyson gets to interpret them. And they will be mostly fleshed out by the time I give the song to them, but there might be a little change here and there, and you can have the sort of poetic freedom or lyrical freedom to make changes to it without changing a narrative, because there's not really a singular narrative in a lot of these songs. It's like, is that line evocative? Does it have good imagery? Does it add? And I'm not writing like on the nose love songs, or I'm not writing on the nose breakup songs even. So it gives them the opportunity to be like, oh yeah, what about this line? And it usually is just like, a line here, a line there, a word here or a word there. Yeah. But there's not like a huge like, oh yeah, we got to cut this whole verse and write a new verse or something like that.
It's more about like shaping sound of words at times. What's going to feel good aesthetically almost.
Phonetically, a word might sound better than another word, and again, I think that like the cool thing about it is them having the ability to interpret it the way that they do, and then they'll explain that to me. It's like, oh, that's what you took from that? That's cool. Okay, well, that's your meaning of it. Yeah. That's sick.
And just nice to know people are paying attention and not just playing the songs.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially for Ian, you said you're a lyric guy. I'm sure you're diving into those lyrics a bit.
Oh, definitely. I mean, on Horses, the track that we're putting out on the 31st. Yeah. I think I actually even took a full pass at just rewriting the lyrics to Horses in the same vein, and I think we wound up using like one line.
Yeah, there was one line. I was like, that's better.
And I don't know. I mean, just that's kind of fun to just go back and forth. It's like a friendly competition of like who can come up with the strangest or the most evocative, or just what fits here, and play with it. It's about playing.
As far as Chris on drums, you've been playing with him since you guys were kids. Yeah. What do you think has kept that relationship intact?
Therapy.
Hell yeah. Well, I think somebody like Chris Wyson to me is a certain brand of creative where they're cycling through different media, so it might be music, it might be visual art. They just are they need to be constantly making things. And that's always been really attractive to me because I'm not that way. I feel like I have a very small creative voice, and a window opens up every once in a while and something comes through. And I've always loved that about him, and just how obsessive he is about things that I wouldn't ever really think about, certain sounds, just certain interests outside of band music. Like he loves synthesizers and modular stuff, So there's that component, that me really finding his creative voice and his creative life as being inspiring.
And exposing you to things.
And exposing me to things and kind of blowing the lid off a lot of stuff and like showing me stuff. And then just his songwriting ability also has really been developed. He's not just a drummer. The guy has an opinion about everything, on every song, and he has that clear-minded vision about things that I don't necessarily have a lot of the time. And yeah, I think that's the gist of it.
Yeah, Ian, was it easy for you to like walk into this existing dynamic, this
No.
thing that like, what was that like for you?
Here's the
And-
tea. We're getting to the tea
yeah.
now.
Oh yeah. No, I mean they're like brothers, truly. I mean, I think you guys have known each other since you were like 4.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, we barely cognizant and we're already like
Yeah,
hanging out.
Yeah.
yeah. Was that intimidating at all to walk into, or did it feel pretty warm in most
mean,
ways?
They're both great guys. Like it's not like they're not warm. It's just it's different to walk into a musical scenario where two people kind of are already on the same page.
Yeah,
And you're slotting yourself into that
yeah,
and trying to like elbow a couple of things in, like, no, like let's just try it this other way. It might be cool. And just no, I mean, we've been doing this project now for about 4 years, and it's settling into a rhythm.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's like literally joining a band of, 2 brothers, and they I mean, half the time they're off cackling about some joke or something that happened
That they made-
20 years ago when
Yeah,
they were
yeah, yeah.
kids, and
Legit.
and you're just sort of like, you're enjoying that. That's nice.
Yeah.
So that's different.
Yeah,
But again, with that idea of like the family band, like it's like joining a family,
yeah,
and seeing the collective kind of musical identity that these two guys have built over basically their whole lives, and figuring out how my voice fits in with all that.
yeah. Just to close out, tell me about how you feel like, both being from Florida, and that Miami, Fort Lauderdale area, or at least spending some of your life there, Ian. Tell me about how you feel like maybe like Florida shows itself in your music,
Oh, that's a great question.
but
Oh,
also
boy.
now that you've been in LA for a little while, how that has like maybe informed the lens as well.
Without sounding overly dismissive, I think your creative voice is as much the choices you choose to not do, and the things that you say, no, this isn't me, this isn't us,
Yeah.
as it is the things that you choose to record and put on tape and play for an audience. Florida's more in the things I chose not to do and be a part of.
For sure.
And it's just not a music scene that I felt welcome in, that I identified with. And then, I mean, yeah, I think there's a reason why all 3 of us are living in LA instead of Miami.
Absolutely. I guess like more, maybe not even speaking to Florida's music scene or like what that music scene is, but like that obviously like growing up somewhere impacts your psyche in some
Yes.
way,
Yeah.
And maybe
Yeah.
Chris, you being there like your entire life. I don't know, maybe if you like can speak to that, like how you feel like that informs maybe even your lyrics at times, or like the things that you're thinking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's such a good question, and I've never thought about it, because I think the way that you answered it, Ian, is perfectly describing how I feel also about Florida.
Just kind of you left that behind.
Leaving that behind and seeing that as a place in time where there was such an alienation from the things that I was into. Portland is exactly the thing, is so opposed to the things that I was experiencing growing up. This place represents exactly the thing that I wanted, that felt so far away.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And I think maybe on the other side of it, there is this kind of weird attraction to elements of weird America.
Yeah.
Things that are, I don't know, maybe just there's an otherness about Florida that I think might be showing up in this record,
especially visually.
Yeah, visually, like I don't know. There's like if you go to Boca Raton and you go visit your grandmother in a retirement community, like that's a weird fucking
There's
place.
certain shit you're gonna see, man. I've
Yeah.
gotten to spend some time in Florida the last 10 years. My mom moved to Tampa Bay. I was telling Ian this. My mom has lived in Florida for like the last 12 to 15 years. She's been in Tampa Bay probably for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And the first time I went, she was living in Jacksonville. I did not like it at all.
I lived in Jacksonville too. Yeah.
And maybe I would feel differently if I went to Jacksonville
Yeah.
now. But
Yeah.
as I have gone to Florida more to go
Yeah.
visit her, it has grown on me.
Yeah.
And there are things about it that I do like, and maybe it's just the people watching sometimes.
Yes.
It's the pacing of things at times. It's the weird highways,
Yeah.
2-lane highways that seems to like
Yeah.
in these weird little roadside motels
Right.
and shit that you
Right,
see
right,
in
right.
between the major cities, and
Yeah.
like there's something about it that
Yeah.
like I get more excited about it every time I go, you know. Like I don't think it's like a place I would probably also try to leave, you know,
Yeah.
if I
Yeah.
if I grew up there. But also, and I can like relate to what you guys are saying, because I think I was seeking something similar when I moved to Portland, Oregon. Even though I grew up 40 miles outside of Los Angeles, I never grew up in the city, so I didn't like get maybe what I was looking for
Right.
in the suburbs of California. And like in some ways, yeah, there was like pieces of that and pieces of me even that
Yeah.
I wanted to maybe leave behind in some ways, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe this is a hot take, but I actually think it's really important, especially for developing artists, to feel some sense of alienation and to have that drive to dig deeper within themselves for something better and something, you know, creative, and to look around themselves and want for some sense of belonging. Like I think that
Yeah.
maybe just to fully come back and answer your original question, alienation is a huge topic lyrically on this record, of, you know, whether that's feeling alienated from your peers, looking at our society and seeing those who we alienate,
Yeah.
especially unhoused communities, and how we treat people on the fringes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
1,000%.
Yeah.
and not belonging, I think, is just it's an important feeling to acknowledge, and also like if you don't, you know, go out every night and get drunk and party with all your buddies, like you're gonna stay home and write songs.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
or
sure.
make art.
Yeah.
It's I think that is the root of a lot of art being created, for sure.
Yeah. I think we're excavating something that was so deeply subconscious that we weren't even clocking it. But
Yeah.
knowing when I go to Florida, there's just this feeling that I get every time. There's just like a kind of a vacancy and emptiness that I feel, you know?
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
feeling sort of gets recreated. Like we've been on the road and we've been to, you know, some places that are a bit out there, you know? And I think feeling that and then writing about it in a way that's talking about people that might be in fringe society and that are sort of stagnant and forgotten about, these communities or whatever, it has to be informed by what I was feeling back in Florida to an extent, you know, especially Miami, which is like, I don't know, it just, there were times where it felt like kind of a pop-up city, which it sort of was. It was just like developed in the 80s out of nothing.
Yeah.
And then you have this, you know, what seems like this thriving kind of cosmopolitan place, when in reality, there's just like, at the time growing up, it just felt like there was nothing underneath that.
Yeah.
It had this sort of pristine, beautiful image, but when you live there, it just felt fucking empty to
Well,
me.
yeah, I'm sure like living in a city that's like just, you have so many tourists
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
It's like I've been to Miami once. It actually like blew me away, and I thought
Yeah.
it was I enjoyed it like way more than I thought I would.
Yeah.
And I think most of it, like so much of it, and I think Florida, maybe in Tampa Bay too, but specifically in Miami, you're around so many different cultures and so many different languages are being
Yes.
spoken around
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
Because there's like a lot of people that have just ended up there, living there, or there's just so many people that are visiting there on their vacation.
Yeah.
That there's like so much happening around you, but like tapping into like what you were saying, Chris, as far as like, you know, specific imagery of going to Boca Raton.
Yeah.
There's no way that you like live in a place like that for so long, and that type of imagery doesn't like permeate somewhere
exactly.
in the brain.
Yeah.
You know?
It's fun to go on spring break, but it's not always fun to live in perpetual spring break land.
Yeah, for
where
sure.
everyone's coming and just, you know, that's, you know, the mentality.
It felt a bit like a kind of cultural wasteland for me.
Yeah.
You know, and that I felt all the way up until, you know, 19, 20 years old. And so that's a great question. I think it kind of frames this new record in a new way for me.
Yeah, I know. We got to think about that.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. That was a great question.
Well,
Dan with the deep questions.
Yeah, man.
you know, I was just always, I'm super interested in where people come from. I mean, I think it's like been pretty represented in music history that like like regions have such a big impact on music, and like it's because, you know, this country is so different from region to region. And
Yeah.
like you don't know that, I don't think, until you like really step into it. But it's like the reason, you know, the Pacific Northwest had the height of grunge. Like you live here for a winter or two, or like for 6 to 9 months out of the year when it's like gray and rainy, and you're like, yeah, that like Nirvana and Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam, it makes sense why that music was made here. Like, I don't know, there's like, go to California and spend some time there, and it's like, yeah, of course the Beach Boys and the Red Hot Chili Peppers and stuff is like from here, and you know it. I think that stuff is like very evident in some ways, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the irony is now, and I don't know if you feel this, but when I go to Florida now, I can recognize the weirdness and why I felt that sense of alienation and whatever. But also getting older, it's like, oh, you see friends that you grew up with, and there's a part of me that gets filled in a way that nowhere else does.
Yeah.
So now there's a soulful element that is really compelling for sure. So I'm not shitting on Miami entirely.
No, absolutely. And again, that's, you know, where our folks live.
Yeah.
But I think there is something impactful about growing up and just wanting to leave for so long.
Definitely.
And just, But no, I mean, there's no place is all bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Well, appreciate you all, you know, making some time for me. I'm glad I got to
Thanks for having us.
hang with you guys. Glad I got to see you guys play some music. Like I said, I've been enjoying the recorded music so much, so I'm really looking forward to this next batch of tunes that you guys put out. I want to play the episode out with Swimmer, which is one of the more recent tunes from Brother Swan here. I'll put all the links in the episode notes so people can keep up with you guys.
Cool.
And we end every episode of the podcast with the guest saying the tagline for the show, which is "It's a program," and it means nothing. It's just the way that my grandfather says the word program. He says program anytime he's talking to you about like a school program. It's incredible. Yeah, exactly. Every let's turn on the news program. So if you can deliver it however you would like, if we can get the Brother Swan "It's a program," we can properly sail this thing out. It's the one time I will ask you to look into that camera.
This is Brother Swan, and this is a program.
It's a program.
You screwed it up. You had one line.
This is Brother Swan. It's a program.
They nailed it, everybody. That's Brother Swan. They're based out of Los Angeles. They made their way there from Florida, and all the links are in the episode notes. Playing it out with Swimmer, and that's the Jelly Jams, and we will catch you on the flip side, Portland, or wherever you are listening from. Cool. We did it.
Cool. Great job, dude.
Dan, I think I'm gonna be thinking about that question for the rest of the month. Oh my god. Because you spent